it was more than a decent result. It was a good performance. And as the commentators said, going in at half-time, we were the better side. And the statistics bore that out. We had something like 60% of the possession compared to their 40%. And one interesting stat that they tacked on to that, the television people, is that only once in the Championship so far this season has a side won a game in which they had less than half of the possession. That was Millwall. Sometimes these stats can be quite edifying. And that bode well for the second half. But it was that tale of two halves. We had the first half, could have gone in 1-0 up, maybe deserved to go in 2-0 up. Up by 2 goals. But the second half, they came out, don't know whether they had a roasting. First time I've seen this Will Still character. He looks a bit sullen to me, and he got yellow carded for complaining about one of the ref's decisions. And I don't know if you noticed it, but he sort of had a little tiny barging match. I think it was accidental between him and John Messino. John Messino's the bigger lad. And sort of John turned and smiled over his shoulder as if to say, oops, that was obviously not intentional. But Will still resented it. So there was a little bit of friction going on down there. It wasn't much of a handshake either. They sort of touched tips of their fingers and went in different directions. So it was a keenly fought game on the terraces. And when I say fought, I mean sung on the terraces. A keenly fought game argued in the technical areas. We used to call it the dugout. The fourth official got his ears battered and bruised by both sides, I think. Certainly John Messino, who sometimes spends more of the game, or at least appears to spend more of the game conversing, that's putting it politely, with the fourth official. The ref had a good game, didn't he? It's funny how that somehow sticks in the craw. If you haven't won the game, to say that the referee had a good game almost seems like you're sort of running away from the truth. The truth is we were certainly good enough for a draw. And one other statistic that they kept reminding us of is that Southampton spent nearly £60 million close season, and we spent about £5, and we did not look 10 times worse than them. Of course, money doesn't buy you points or wins or goals, but it helps. And they spent that much more than us during the summer, that it was difficult for them to bring on a player who hadn't cost tens of millions of pounds. But they did. They rang the changes. We rang the changes. They had a couple of chances, which, frankly, they fluffed high and wide. They created a couple of opportunities, but our two centre-halves were magnificent. And I'll have a word about the individual players in just a second. By the way, if you're listening to this as a podcast, well, actually, if you're listening to this as our radio output, we're going to just break the habit of a lifetime and offer an email address if you want to comment and have your comments read out on air or part of the next podcast. So I'll do that email address now. It's very simple. It's Radio Pompey. I know we're not called that, but at the time of setting up our email setup, that's what we were calling ourselves. radiopompey@gmail.com. Very simple. Okay? So if you get a moment, send me an email. I'm not giving you a job. I've always been of the view that radio, television, newspapers shouldn't give the audience work to do. We'd love to hear from you, all that. It's often just because they want to read out emails to suggest that they've got some sort of an audience. Well, we're not doing it for that reason at all. We're doing that partly because today's a special day, big derby game. It's a good result, 0-0. We got a clean sheet. Could we have scored? There were a couple of occasions when the ball went in towards Bishop and it was just too far ahead of him. On one occasion he did manage to get something on it, but on that occasion he was ahead of the ball and he had to sort of like scoop it round with his back 3/4 of the way at the goal, and it wasn't easy. And Bassoon, who's not a bad keeper, give him his due. So as for the Pompey players, well, the second biggest incident of the first half was, of course, when Nico Schmidt came herring out of his box towards what would be the left-back position And a Southampton player was Proximus, nearby, that's in English, and he hammered into Ogilvy. Now, I'm not clear, they did show it a couple of times, what contact happened between whom and where. I think Pompey got a free kick out of it, but that may not necessarily indicate that the Southampton player was completely culpable for not one but two Pompey players having to come off in the end injured. Schmidt couldn't go on. He tried. He couldn't go on. He'd hurt his arm, his wrist. Let's hope that's not serious, of course. But there are now plenty of goalkeepers at Fratton Park. So we're covered as far as that goes if Schmidt has to miss a game or two in order to recover from a hand or a wrist injury, something like that. We had a good look at his gloves, which I've never seen close up before, a modern professional goalkeeper's gloves. They're gauntlets. They come halfway up his forearm. And getting them on is a real struggle, especially if you just injured your arm. He took his gloves off to have treatment. Getting it on again, it needed two men to to push the glove all the way onto the hand and then up the arm. Anyway, he eventually came off, and Ben Killip came on and did all right. He did all right, didn't he? He didn't have that much to do through what was left of the first half, but what he did perfectly well. In the second half, he was under a bit more pressure. One or two of his clearances were less than 100%, but we got away with it. So if I were giving marks, I would give him 7.5, maybe even an 8. You can't penalise a goalkeeper who keeps a clean sheet for 3/4 of a game. Forgive me. Especially a game like that being played at their place. So quickly going across the defence, I thought everybody played really well, didn't you? Zach Swanson was excellent, tenacious, strong, mobile, and standing in the right place at the right time. The two centre-halves were absolute towers of strength. In the air, on the ground, covering. Shaughnessy is Shaughnessy. We know that we've got a 101% centre-half in both of them, actually. Regan Poole, perhaps that much more of a Premier League-looking player. There is an element of class about the way he moves and the decision-making that he engages. And his distribution is also excellent. So the pair of them were great. Conor Ogilvy had to come off at half-time when they had a look. They probably hadn't been able to see, the people in the technical area hadn't been able to see the extent of the bump on his head. I mean, he was perfectly prepared, Conor, to head the ball with a bump on his head the size of a quail's egg. I know, I haven't seen a quail's egg either, but I imagine that's about the size of them. And it was bleeding. It was a proper bruise, and he will have a headache in the morning and probably until Thursday. But off he came, and he wanted to watch the game, and he sat in his tracksuit, glowering, almost as though he was kicking every ball and heading every header. So he gets... Oh, you always give Ogilvy at least 8, don't you? Williams came on in his place, playing on the wrong side of the defence as far as he's concerned. He's so quick and he's so intelligent and so professional. It wasn't a problem for him. And he had a great game the whole of the second half. He made some very important tackles. He looked pretty dangerous going forward. Not quite as dangerous as Ogilvy, who is now almost a semi-left winger. When Josh gets the ball, Ogilvy overlaps and goes 20 yards on beyond him. It's partly because they line up to tackle Murphy. Sometimes most teams double up against Murphy so that there is a man trying to close him down. He's the first one. Then there's somebody 3 or 4 yards behind him. Southampton trebled up on him. Most of the time they trebled up on him. That's what sort of a threat he was frightening them about. In front of the back four, Dazelle was magnificent, wasn't he? Oh, it's such a change from the player who arrived on some kind of a nothingy deal from QPR. Some people castigated him for being a QPR reject, and QPR aren't much cop. Well, he was majestic today, and he was carrying an injury from what was the best effort of the match, side-footing that ball for the top corner from outside the box was pure class. And I think Bazunu would have got his fingers to it if it had been low enough to go under the bar. But that isn't the point. The point is he almost took his chance really well. Whether or not he injured himself, it looked like a slight groin strain, and he caught a whack from the ball in that same region a little bit later on in the second half and sort of rubbed it and hobbled away. But he got on with it, didn't he? Swift is Swift. What an absolute steal that man is. He's great, isn't he? He just knows where to be. The commentators were saying, how wonderful it must be to have players of the experience and ability of Swift and Chaplin. And we'll get to Chaplin in just a second. Don't know about you. I was so excited by some of the things he did. There was one particular 180-degree turn he did with a man on his back. The ball came to him quickly. Wasn't Pompey's close control brilliant? Firing the ball flat and fast to people in forward positions who were taking it cleanly and not losing possession. They were controlling it right underneath them, so the opponent who was behind them just couldn't get anything on the ball. Brilliant. Chaplin, again, like Swift, what an absolute steal. Fantastic. Colby Bishop had a great game. Just couldn't quite free himself up to get on the end of quite a few decent crosses that came in, particularly from Josh, of course, but he was a constant threat. His hold-up play, the way he pushes back into the centre-half's territory and shoves him backwards so that he can't make the jump, that he can't get his head on the ball. Bishop is starting to win the majority of the 50-50 aerial combats he goes in on, even with long balls that are ballooned out of defence. And he really has no right to get, because he's often that much shorter and slightly smaller than the man he's up against. But he makes the contact. He caresses the ball. He brings it down. He did a great job. I don't think Adrian Segacic was quite himself against Southampton. We persevered with him. He always looks a tidy player, as though he's anxious to try and make something happen. He played the pressing game brilliantly, thoroughly. He harassed them, but he couldn't do what he is capable of doing on the ball. Everybody's entitled to a game where you're a little bit below your best, and I would put it to you, I don't know if you do agree or disagree. I'll do that email number again if you want to take me to task on anything. So grab a pencil, piece of paper. I didn't think he was quite at his best. He looked as though he almost lost a little bit of confidence. And of course he'll get that back. We know how to help players get that back. Who came on? LaRue came on, and he looked completely at home. Sometimes players, when they come on as substitutes, they need to get hold of the ball. They need to start feeling involved. They need to get the feel for the pitch and the ball and the stuff that's going on around them. And he just blended in perfectly, easily enough and well. And Devlin, well, what can you say about Devlin other than that he plays where he wants? He was a force out there on the pitch and a great player to be able to bring on. I'm not going to go around giving people marks out of 10. I'd actually find it a little bit discomforting when some of our print journalists do. But I don't think it does any harm, so I'm not going to criticise them for doing that. But that is about the size of the game, I would say. I know we moved down to number 10th in the Championship after Saturday's round of games. But I think we moved back up one to number 9 to 9th in the table, which is healthy because it means if you look at the table on your phone, you don't have to scroll down to see us. We are there on the page, the first page you come to, if you click on Championship League table, which is a nice place to be. We are higher than many of us thought we would end up finishing in the season, at the end of the season, and that's healthy too. So is that 2 wins, 2 draws and a defeat? I think it's something that's not bad. That is not bad at all. We've just been to a side who were playing the Liverpools and the Manchester Cities of this world not that long ago. We've been to their gaff. We've got a squad that's getting used to each other. And we came out, I would put it to you, marginally the better side. OK, they had more of the second half, but we had so much more of the first half. There were fans amongst us, I'm certain, who thought it's only a matter of time. We can stick 3 past this lot. Didn't happen. But would you have taken 0-0 before the game? Of course you would. I would gladly. The only things that tickled me, actually, the television coverage, commentators still worry that people are going to switch off if with 15 minutes to go, it's still 0-0. It's a hangover from a bygone era, guys. Forget about it. You don't have to apologise and start willing a goal at either end. You don't care which. Please just give us something to get excited about before people tune over to see what's on BBC One or whatever. That wouldn't happen. That was never going to happen. People who were watching that game at the start would have be still watching it half an hour afterwards if they'd played 30 minutes of added time. There was quite a bit of added time because not only did Schmidt go down and stay down for a good while, but Ben Killip had a go at sitting on the ground, pulling grimaced faces. So, would you have taken 0-0? Yes, you would, dear listener, dear Pompey fan. The email address, if you want to agree or disagree with this early summary of the game, it's Radio Pompey at gmail.com, radiopompey@gmail.com, and that comes straight through to the studio, so we'll pick it up straight away if you're kind enough to spend 30 seconds doing that. That would be great. We'll be getting the views of our other correspondents, the Mick Robertsons of this world, the Steve Bones, the Dean Adams, the Sam Stone, of course, and never forgetting Dan Shaw. As the week develops and we have an opportunity to digest what is turning into a very solid start to the season 2025-26.